Where have you come from, anyway?
Portsmouth.
Portsmouth.
All the way down on the south coast. So,
is that where you're living now?
Yeah.
Born and bred or not?
No, Lincolnshire, born and bred.
Lincolnshire.
Yeah. I'm a proper carrot cruncher.
What, like a Skeates kind of guy?
No, actually Lincoln.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I lived just outside there till I was about, I don't know now. Well, until the ex found out.
So you're in Stuart Lambert's location. He was in Boston.
He was Boston. Yeah, I was nowhere near that. But yeah, he was up that way. But yeah, so yeah, literally did a load of years there. But there's nothing in Lincoln. Do you know what I mean? There's no industry.
So you're down south now?
So yeah, literally went to AFI when I was about 28, I think. And started just moving around with them and just followed the sort of work really, and then met a girl.
As you do.
And decided, right, there you go.
Let's not
go too
to try.
Yeah.
You won't be able to get it all out now.
No, not all we want to talk about, like your ex-wife or.
That would be an interesting.
Although she has paid me to film this, send her a copy.
It's all right. The divorce is all done. She's got everything. She can't get any more.
That's it. Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
There's never say never. Right. So, welcome back, boys and girls.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah,
delighted to have Stephen.
Thanks for the invite. Yeah, Steve, please. Yeah, let's not tell me off.
From Reactive Rentals, or as of now. We'll talk about where you've been before in the past, but we always start off straight into it. What's doing our Eddie? Who's got what's doing?
Do you want me to go first? As I normally do. It's always something.
There is.
Do you know what happened to me this week, right?
Go on.
I got the train out of London, been to see some customers in London, right? And I knew something was wrong when the train starts going really slow, and then they come on the mic, don't they? Yeah, can the guard report to the driver? And I think, here we go, right, what is this? And I wouldn't mind, but we weren't even at Bromley South. That's the first stop from coming out of London, yeah? Train stops at Bromley South. The driver announces that there's a fire somewhere down the line, and that's miles away, by the way, right? Yeah. And that's where it's stopping, right? And I think it took me 4.5 hours and 6 changes to get back from, because I had to go into Medway and then all to try and get onto my line. And then I actually got on my line. This is the crazy thing, right? I eventually got to Maidstone Barracks. You walk from Maidstone Barracks to Maidstone East. I get to Maidstone East and the thing's up saying there's no trains running. They haven't even left Victoria yet because of the fire on the line. So then I ended up having to get a cab anyway.
You're joking.
I ain't, no. So that's what's doing my head in. So my point is this: how is it you can kick out all them people, because there's a lot of people, and there's no alternative?
There's normally like a rail replacement bus, isn't there?
There was nothing.
Really?
No. I'm standing there. I'm like, and there's like one guy, and you can imagine the queue was like trying to get into Disney World just to ask his advice, right? It was like that, and I thought, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but there's no choice, is there? They don't care, do they? Because you're not going to pick another train line the next day.
No.
So they don't need to. It's just like, there's no business sense for them to put it on, is there?
Get yourself home, mate.
Yeah, see ya. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Hopefully we'll have a better day.
There was a fire on the line though, wasn't it?
There was a fire. I don't know if it's on the line.
So what you're saying is you should have just motored
through it. Yeah.
What I'm thinking is, right, what were the old fire suppression days, right? If they were kitted out with a few cylinders on the top.
On each side, yeah.
As each train passes by, you can pull the discharge button and it kind of, so few trains, it might be out, mightn't it?
I mean, that's a strange universe. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I was thinking we was going to go more highbrow, like, do you know what genuinely what does my nut in? So I moved over to an EV about 18 months ago.
We've got a few.
You're in my club now.
Yeah, and it's like, and now I sort of see it without talking too much shop. You see all this hype, everyone, this booms this scissors that, everything's going, we've all seen it. Look at this electric digger. And I'm thinking, electric cars have been around a damn sight longer than these big booms and stuff like that. And we're nowhere near. I mean, in fairness, I've pulled up this morning and I've been to my first ever EV charging garage. I.e., it's like same as a fuel station, 20 bays, bang it on charge, go get a coffee. It was brilliant and it was cheap. Yeah. But 99% of the time, I'm driving my car like that. Turn the aircon off.
Oh yeah.
Look at my range. Am I going to make it? And
at least you got aircon. Marks don't work.
No, it does now.
It does. He turns it off for the economy.
No,
Gets an extra 10 mile out of it.
It was stuck on, what is it?
Mine was stuck on. It was stuck on 46 degrees outside, right? But I want to add, I want to add that it thought it was 46 degrees outside when we went through that cold spell, that -5 shit, right? So I was actually
the window open.
So that's why you've lost weight then. It's nothing to do with you sweating.
I was the only guy putting gear on to get in the car. Right, everyone else is taking their coats off, and and it was stuck on 46. I'm driving along, and I'm going, oh god, because the car's so clever, it won't. I'm maxing it out as far as I can go on max.
I should turn it off.
But then it's ridiculous. You're freezing even more, and all the windscreen's all misted up, so I can't.
Sorry, Steve, I cut you off there. So
no, it's fine. I'm like. Obviously, I'm not doing it to save the planet. I'm doing it for personal gain because it's cheaper to run through the business.
You can't say that.
Well, all right. I am doing it to save the planet. It is for the future of my kids, obviously. It's nothing to do with the fact that lithium's going to be rotting away in a quarry in China in the next 50 years. But that just does my nut. It absolutely does my nut. Everything about it makes sense, apart from when you
Does it make sense though? You think, does it make sense?
Apart from when you've got to charge it.
Yeah,
that's the only downside.
Have you ever gone and charged it and it's like, it's another app that you need to download?
I swear down.
So then, I've got 6 apps now for charging stations.
No, that's nothing. I've probably got 14.
Really?
I mean, I literally, the most, apart from running a business when you have a good day or a bad day, when you have the bad day, you have that level of anxiety. Last month, lastminute.com, me and the miss and the kids, right, come on, let's go away for the weekend. Right, where are we going to go? Let's go to France. In the car.
Oh.
Yeah,
that was the highest level of anxiety I've ever had in my life. You load the car up, so you get in the car and it says, right, you've got 250 miles. As soon as you start driving, the car's like, no, you haven't, mate, you got about 160.
We tested a car. What was it? A small, I don't know, it was a Volkswagen or something like that.
Yeah.
And a friend of ours and the pod, Darren Cummins.
Oh, yeah.
I says to him, he lived in Gatwick and we was in Chelmsford. I said, do us a favour and just drive that back with you. Just give it a test. He said, no problem. It's got 280 miles on it, charged fully up. Of course, it was like 100 degrees outside. He's whacked it on. He said, literally, as he was getting in, he'd come in the morning, he was going back home with it. It went from 50 or 60 miles, no problem. He's only got 20 miles left to 3 miles.
Yeah. It's
3 miles.
Honestly, it's awful.
If the cold.
He said, I was just trying to, cruise around, do whatever. Yes, it's, I don't know. But we could talk about it a little bit.
The ideal thing for those is about 18 to 19 degrees. So you don't need to put your aircon on.
Yeah.
So if it's hot in the summer, I will get an extra 80, 90 miles out of it, right? Yeah. Which is fine, but then you've got to put your aircon on. So then the aircon knocks out your range. Then in the winter, because the batteries are really cold, they don't have the same level of energy in them. Right. So then your starting mileage is even lower. Then you're whacking your heating on. Yeah. I mean, I've got all the bells and whistles on the car and I don't use them.
Yeah.
It's not the same as that, yeah.
Heated seats, heated steering
wheel. You've all got 3 electric cars, haven't you?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I
just bought a diesel.
Yeah.
Just to even it out.
It's a way. I mean, that does my note. Yeah. That is literally like my life.
But I reckon my diesel is more environmentally friendly because we don't have to, we do a little bit of drilling, but we don't have to mine like we do with all the
do you know what?
batteries and stuff like that.
There is a formula, right? And they reckon that an electric car we're talking about environmental here, yeah? And that you've got to do 300,000 miles for an electric car to be equal.
Really?
To a diesel, yeah. And then so only after
the battery's trained by that point.
Only after you can't do 300, let alone 300,000. But but after you've done 300,000, they then reckon if you stay in that car and you continue to drive that car, they then reckon that you're now environmentally friendly because you're utilising what's already been.
Yeah, but you've got to think though, like the battery pack in it. I mean, I saw something the other day. There was a guy driving around in one of the first, what was them little BMW? Was it like an i3 or something? One of the first ones, quite quirky design. This was something like 10 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
He still had his original battery pack in it, and his maximum range now was 46 miles on a full charge. And he was like, I'm lucky because I only commute local in town. I'm thinking, how on earth can anybody?
Does it take them same amount of time to charge fully? So let's say you were getting 200 miles out of it, right? So on a normal range, that might take you a I don't know, overnight, for example,
Yeah.
to just get the 40
Yeah, I
miles
reckon
in
it
there,
would.
Yeah,
would
I
that
think
take
it is.
overnight?
No, I think it charges quicker, but it's not
get
charging
to-
quicker because on a battery, I forgot the actual scientific words, but on a battery, you got your 2 poles, haven't you? And the electrons, that's the word, isn't it? The electrons have got to go from one side to the other. That's what charging is. Discharging is when they're going the other way.
Yeah.
And the reason why they say don't go above 80% or below 20 is because on your pole, if you like, the electrons have got to find the space to not just move but settle. And when you get above 80%, there's less space. So then where the damage is done is where electron is jumping from, say you're charging, it's jumping from the negative to the positive, and it can't. There's no space. It can't. And
This
that's
is all very technical.
Yeah, it's a bit
It
too.
is.
I mean, here I am bitching and moaning about
Yeah,
charging the
just-
car, and we're now
Jesus.
talking positive and negative electrons. Yeah, I don't know. That just for me, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. Bring back diesels or down the route of a hybrid for me.
We're not set up, are we? You know, we're not set up for
We're not
I
ready
think,
for it.
I think they did it. I mean, what doesn't get recognised, to be honest, is they done a really great job with diesels. When I roll back to the old, that used to sound like a bag of spanners, they put on injection, they put on recirculation valves, they put on, they made it, as what they call it, HD injection, didn't they? Then turbos, so you're recycling. When you actually look at the efficiency of a modern day diesel, it's actually phenomenal,
Yeah.
right? And I'd argue that we've got to a point where, I know they say diesel's not great for the environment and all the rest of it, but when with all the DPFs and everything else now, what's actually coming out
the other end? Yeah,
is
yeah.
a lot less than it ever
Yeah.
was. I mean, I remember as a kid, you knew if a diesel went up the road because you couldn't see.
You'd
for
be
half an
driving
hour.
through the sort, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but now they're phenomenally clean.
Well, look, come on, Charlie. Look, tell me, you must have something that's pissed you off this
In
week.
fact,
It's
I know
been
what's doing your head
difficult.
in.
What's that? I know what's
But you
doing
ain't
my
got
head
nothing. You can't think of nothing.
Yeah,
that's doing your head in.
in. Nah, do you know what? I've got it right because it came to me earlier. It was an epiphany. Recruitment stereotypes is what's doing my head in, and I'm definitely opening a can of worms. When I
You
say
are
this.
definitely.
However,
you're up against it,
right?
yeah.
Mark's
All I'm
living
saying
up to
is that one recruitment business can be very, very different from others and how others operate. They're not all the same brush. Granted, the majority might be painted with the same brush, but not all of them are. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot to be said for recruiters, good and bad, I will say, and I do believe that because obviously I'm a recruiter. Now, you know, if you need someone to fill your role and you are absolutely struggling beyond belief to fill it, then we are here to sort that out and we will do it. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's a small incestuous industry, what we work in, and we can never be in a situation where we're putting someone's nose out of joint. So a lot of people will say, I won't use a recruiter because they'll place someone in my business and then they will, you know, take them away from it 4 months later, you know, whatever. And, you know, that's one recruitment business. If they choose to operate like that, then probably not going to stick around for very long, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, you can't bite the hand that feeds you. But all I'm saying is we're a very different business to that. And I think we get these stereotypes as recruiters, and I just don't think it's always fair.
I think people don't know how to work with recruiters. I've worked with recruiters. I think you need to partner with one. They need to understand your culture. They understand what type of person you're looking for, what you want on a CV. You need to
Big
put
time.
the effort in.
Big time.
But I feel that, it's a value, isn't it? So it depends on how big your business is and how much you know. If I'm involved in the recruitment, how cost effective is it for me to then have to filter through 1,500 bloody CVs?
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
800 of them from Kenya, 200 from where.
It might be
every day of my life.
$5,000, 6, whatever it might work out as for a big appointment, maybe more. But how much is that time taking me? How much is that costing that business? I think that's where owners and
It's an outsourcing
directors
thing,
don't
you know,
look at
Yeah.
what they actually cost themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what their value is,
And
by
also
doing other things.
and the cost of waiting for someone to fill that position. So if, for example, you've got a driver and you can't possibly find a driver for love nor money, that's costing your business a lot. That's costing your business because maybe you're not able to get the amount of equipment out on time. Maybe your service is lacking as a result, and also maybe the pressure on your staff at the moment, it means that they're probably feeling way too under pressure, and they're
passionate about this, isn't it?
and they're going to go elsewhere.
Invested in this,
and I just feel that there are horrible recruiters out there. There really are, and there's a lot of.
But that's the same with every business, isn't it?
But it's the same. It's the same.
And you don't use. You got. You shouldn't. I don't think you should worry about. There's people that you can't change their mind in it.
All day.
We're talking about we're in the equipment industry. There's probably no difference to one particular make and model, not much to another. But people will detest a certain thing, and they will only. I was with someone yesterday. He wouldn't. There was no talking him out. It's caterpillar. Yeah, that's it. Cat. But he's not experienced life enough to be able to say, well, I'll try this and try that. But what I'm trying to say is the same. You've got people that are out there that are doing a bad job.
Yeah. All day.
And then you've got people that are doing a good job, and they're going to be found out on it. So I wouldn't worry. It's the most, to be honest with you, it's the most passionate I've ever heard you. So obviously, So maybe in the next few weeks, me and Mark will have a proper dig.
I'll start pulling the strings
about things like that. About that time that that guy didn't turn up and.
They're going to be started on that.
I think in terms of recruiters, it's a hiding to nothing. Because ultimately, it's a hiding to nothing. Because you're only as good as the clients that you represent, and ultimately you don't deep down know what their long-term aspiration is. And it is big investments you do, and I think smaller businesses like us, we ultimately rely on recruiters because we don't have HR departments that can go and do the, and we don't have the marketing exposure to advertise a job role and know that it can reach enough people. Our realistic, apart from word of mouth, there's a bit on LinkedIn that we can do, but ultimately it doesn't give you that option. And as you say, time is pressing. Certain roles you've got to fill quite quickly because it can have a detriment impact. But when you get to that point that you filled the role maybe 2 times, someone turned up, didn't work out, or someone didn't even freaking turn up on the first day, they're the times where you sort of think, that $4.5 grand fee. Yes, you want to have that connection with the client as they're coming in, but you also really, a lot of what you're paying for is the trust in the recruiter to actually manage that process and almost walk them through the door on day one. And there's a lot out there now.
But we still make the same mistakes, though. We spoke about this last time. So you're going to spend that $4.5 grand. You see the way that he undercut me there? I said 5 and 6 for you, but he did a 4.5. It's
clever.
We still treat, if you're going to spend that kind of money as well, and you're going to invest in, you made that word investment. And it doesn't matter if they've come really off the street or they've come through like your business. We need to onboard them correctly.
Yes.
Especially if we spend that money, we need to make sure that they're the right person.
Yeah.
That we've not just look. I've made that mistake. I've spent $5 grand on somebody and they've come in, and it's just me that's interviewed them. That's a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need several people to look over that person. You're making a real investment, but people don't realise that either. That even if the person walks off the street, the average cost to employ someone just to get them up and running before they make money is about $8.5 grand. And you think, well, they better know what they're not that they better know what they're doing, as in they better get me sales tomorrow. They better do this, but we better onboard them. And right when we said it in the last pod, didn't we? What's the expectation for that person? But I'm glad that you've really
got on your
soapbox.
It's one of them things. It's one of them things. But I think like you say, the trouble is you can walk someone through the door, but ultimately you can get to a point where it's like you're not always in control of how, like you say, they're onboarded and how they're managed and everything like that. But there is a shared responsibility there as well. We do have to make sure that person is ticking the box. And I think that's also where you said about sort of working in partnership with a recruiter. If you're able to work in partnership with a recruiter, if they're good, they should understand, where you're going as a business and what you're actually looking for. And also, if they do mess up, and they end up leaving or whatever at some point, this candidate, I think having that partnership is valuable, because actually they're not going to want to turn around and say to you, well, stuff ya. They're actually they should be turning around and saying, well, look, what can we do? What went wrong here? What happened? Advising on the situation, and then potentially even doing, whatever it might be, a free replacement, whatever you need to do to get it over the line again to help that client out,
The flittering in, it's the procurement side that you've got to get right with an agency, yeah? Yeah. Your specialist agency, yeah? We can go to lots of agencies. Every day of the week, an agency comes to me, yeah? But they're not in the industry that you need. So you need to make sure that you're honed in on that. Yeah, that's the first thing. So we've got responsibility to engage you in that. But also, we've worked over the years to understand what I want to see on a CV. I don't want to see someone that's been there for a year and then another year and another year, and he's had more jobs. He's had 8 years jobs in 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't want that kind of person. So that's the partnership side. You guys understand where I'm coming from, so that's probably why it's worked. But it don't work for everybody. It doesn't. I feel that I've been doing a lot of work recently with not paid work, by the way, but just work with people that have asked me some advice of struggling at the moment to find work. And I used to be one of those people to ring up, Mark, can you help me out? Get me a job, or ring up, different people and try and help. And I think LinkedIn, you mentioned that. People just don't really know where to fish anymore. And the danger is they've signed up to a recruiter and they've sat there then on the end of the phone waiting for that person to do something and find them a job. And I'm trying to explain to them, look, it's a full-time job to find a job. Yeah, you've just got to keep on applying. And I think the best thing to do, I'm not advocating everyone leave their company, but you should have a subs bench. You should always be networking with other businesses and hopefully be seeing what the opportunity is. And I'll try and get your take on this a bit, Steve, as a business owner. Is like we talked last week about how some companies, or a very innovative company in Ireland, created an academy so people were encouraged more or less to leave his business because he had worked out that a certain level of person or certain kind of people were always going to leave that business. So if he could get 2 or 3 good years out of that person, and he knew that the job was someone else could come into that job, and he had supported that person to get to, because he might not have had that job at the time, to be a manager, to be something else. Or one of the examples we used was the guy wanted to be a chef, and he supported that guy to be that. Now that guy left, says wonderful things now about that company, doesn't he? He attributes his success of where he's becoming a chef to that business. So it's a different way of looking at it. I don't know how you feel about.
I think it's different for us in a lot of respects. The beauty we have is that we're a really small business. So the reality is we can adapt. We can adapt a lot of our business to a candidate if we think they're the right. If they've got the personality and got the attributes, we don't have this corporate threshold that says, oh, we can't do that. And well, you can't finish at R4 on a Tuesday because that's just not what we do, because then everyone's going to want it. So it's easy for us that although we don't have the academy, we don't have the framework, we don't have this like leadership pathway or anything like that. Difference we have is that we can actually talk to an individual and we can actually go case by case with people. And because, we are small. There's 14 of us now, we're tiny. And each person has got their own personal circumstances and their own personal commitments. And each one of those, I'll guarantee you that everybody in our business, something has been tweaked in terms of their role, in terms of how they work, in terms of making sure they can do the school run for the kids on this day of the week.
Yeah.
And, it is selfish in some respect, because ultimately it means we know we can deliver something that the big boys can't. So it gives us a level of protection. Companies I've been in the past, bigger, more corporate businesses, like you say about these academies, it's really clever because, like we all know, good quality engineers are impossible. Even getting good quality depot technicians that you can trust to do a decent inspection on a machine before it goes on rent. Still pretty hard to find because the role doesn't dictate a very strong salary. So the people you're getting by nature of it are generally not coming with any experience and half the time never had any aspiration to actually progress. So one of the companies I was at, they essentially, rather than looking for, say, a depot technician, it was a trainee engineer role. And they had absolutely no qualms that 50% of those people would come through, do the qualifications and then leave. But what they had is that 3-year cycle of people coming in that were, majority are not coming out of college, but they were going into, they were working towards a vocational qualification, and probably 60% of their work was not to do with their training. It was just the day-to-day mundane stuff that needed to be done, but you knew you was getting quality work, and ultimately you were getting it for a cheap price.
And I'm interested you say that because I've come from a background where I was in off-site manufacturing.
Yeah.
And basically what we were doing there was taking the key skills in plastering, tiling, plumbing, putting it in a factory, so therefore de-skilling it because it was the same thing going on. So when you're talking about a general technician, this is what I've never understood with our industry, is when you're talking about that kind of workshop technician who's doing PDIs and things like that, when you actually break down on every day what they actually do, some of those mundane tasks, that's quite easy to de-skill and give that to bring someone else through, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So why don't we do enough of that? What's stopping us? What is it? Is it because we haven't got enough college or enough time or enough?
I think the ones where those specific roles where you could literally go into a business, say, and do a 2-day training course, and you have a level of qualification. The problem is those people could also go out and be a ground worker. They could also go out and be a delivery. Delivery driver, which today we know is one of the fastest growing markets in the world, and is people are earning a fortune at it. So it doesn't have that same pool of people to go after it. So you've got to find something else that can differentiate, that will attract certainly a school leaver that don't want to just go on a building site or go off and do a different vocation. And the reality is, I've been in sort of rental now for probably 25 years or something like that.
So let's talk about that then. Before we go on to it, let's go back. Let's start. So let's find out all about you. Where did you come from? How did you fall into our industry?
So I started out in sales, working in a health club.
Okay.
All right.
And did 3 years doing that, and actually did all right at it. It was like it was proper sales. It was a crap basic wage with a good commission structure. Did it for about 3 years and got sick to death of working on a weekend and calling people up going, "Oh, thanks for visiting the gym. Do you want to sign up?" But I got really good at it, and I got really good at selling on people's emotions and understanding. It wasn't about them just joining a gym. It was like, why were they actually coming through that door?
So you're the reason I'm still paying £40 a month.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
I've been there for 25 years.
Yeah, but there's an emotional contract in your head that you don't want to stop going because you need to do it, and you do want to lose those pounds. And the missus is getting a bit, this, that, and the other. So, that idea was that you're not getting somebody to join now. You're getting them to change their lifestyle. So I got really good at that and really enjoyed it and did well at it. And then, but didn't enjoy the weekends, didn't enjoy working evenings and stuff like that. So a mate of mine who was in plant hire was like, "Come and have a chat with the depot manager. There's a sales job going." Well, I didn't know construction apart from my old man had been a contracts manager for 40 years for Simon's Construction. So I walked into what was Hewden's back in the day.
Oh, right.
Proper traditional old depot. Went into the depot manager's office. 20 B&H on the side, racing post, massive plume of smoke. I mean, at the time I was a smoker anyway. Yeah. This geezer sat there over the desk going, "Right, so you're Skeates then, are you?" I went, "Yeah." He says, "You got it in you?" I went, "Of course I got it in me." He says, "What do you know about this then?" And I was like, "I don't know anything." I says, "But I'm likeable and I'm hardworking and I'll find out what I need to know." He went, "All right, we'll give you a go." And he literally went, "Here's your keys, here's your phone. Now, cough." And it was literally like that. So I literally outside there's this beat up old Astra. It was on LinkedIn, the 52 plate, 1.5 diesel Astra.
That's brilliant.
And I was like, and away I went. And it was, that was the start of it. They left.
What was your first hire? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do actually. 2 still saws, tenner a week, each of them. I thought I was on top of the world.
£10 a week.
10 a week back in the day.
That's cheap.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but that was the rate, wasn't it?
No.
That's a Hewden rate, wasn't
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. That's why they went skin.
10
No,
a
but yeah, it's
week.
about
Do you know what it was? It was
we remember the game when they were about £25, weren't they?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tenner a week, but they did take 2 diamond blades off me, but they didn't buy them, they hired them.
I was about to say
I got about
hire,
35 quid a mil on them as well. So it worked out all right. And that was my first one.
Concrete or asphalt?
It was concrete.
Oh, right.
Yeah, asphalt. No, I didn't go anywhere near like that. You had no chance. But yeah, so it started there, then went to Speedy, did a couple of years at Speedy.
Oh, what? Okay.
And Speedy bought out Hewden's. So the lads that I
Oh,
left.
so was you was at Hewden's when Speedy?
No, I was at Speedy. And
Oh, you ended up working with your mates again?
yeah, so literally, I'm working at Speedy. At the time, I was the depot manager there, and they gave us a shout saying, "Oh yeah, we've bought Hewden's, blah blah blah. You've got 5 new employees," and all the lads that I'd worked with all walked through the door. The old geezer who was like the old depot manager, he had long gone. He'd given up on all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was 3 or 4 years. It was good. It was a good crack. It was a graft, and it was hard because really in that game, a lot of the deals weren't done on site. They were already, the big back in the days with the tolerance and all these. It was all you couldn't get anywhere near it. So you really just scratching around on a few subbies.
How did you find transitioning from sales into depot management?
I think if I'm really honest, I got bored of doing the biscuit rounds.
Okay.
And I got bored of like, what you got in your boot, mate? And I got so sick to death of that in the end that it was like, all people were interested in was I had a couple of mugs and a few pens and they might chuck me an order. And I didn't think I think it sort of changed then. It wasn't really sales.
Yeah.
And there was more and more deals done at the top table than down on the building site. That a lot of the time you were literally, right, I've got this new job. We know we've got it. It's already a Speedy deal. Go see them and get a couple of subbies out of it.
You become like a bit of an order taker, really.
That was it, really. And you're just like this. Yeah, you're just a bit of a figurehead, really. So you're not really then in charge of your own destiny, I don't think. So I sort of came off the road, went into the depot management side because I'd always wanted to sort of manage people, and that was the first sort of chance at it. So did that for a couple of years, and then moved over to AFI, and ended up regional ops manager, sort of running the bottom half of the country. Didn't have the inside the M25. I left that to someone else. And did that for I think I did about 9 years there.
Yeah.
So that was
time.
That was. Do you know what? That was a really interesting time. I learned loads there. They were such a clever business in terms of data and understanding what they were doing, and there was challenges there because it was such a big business and there was lots of different personalities that didn't necessarily get on. That was the first time I sort of really saw the clash and the divide between operations and sales. And it took ages to get trying to get that harmony between the two. There's always, always butting heads. But did the 9 years there, and then got an opportunity to go to Rewall, and went in there to do operational efficiencies and look after the operational side.
For those who don't know Rewall, I do, but for those who don't,
so that was a Dutch business.
What was there? Yeah.
They were they came to the UK market about 14 years ago, and they came purely they didn't want any end users, so they brought niche products into the UK and essentially rented them within the industry, trade rather than end user. They eventually started to expand, and then the UK business did become a proper entity with its own end user customers. But they were a Dutch business operating in 15 countries, so they were a fairly sizable outfit. I think they had peaked at about 20,000 units across the world. They're fairly sizable, and they had a really strong presence in the big kit market. So in the UK, we only had probably 1,100 machines, but our replacement value of our fleet was nigh on 40 million quid. Wow. It was ridiculous, but it was all top heavy. It was all ultra boom. So we were very much a project led business. 10, 15 ultra booms going on a job would be standard. Whereas, in most businesses now, they won't even have 10 or 15 of the ultra booms to even do it. No. So that was massive for me. And their business was totally around operational efficiencies. I learned stuff there about the metrics around an actual product and how they would reduce an asset's what they would call the lazy period of it. They look at it to the minute in terms of how they inspect a machine to the highest quality, but how they do that inspection, which wheel they look at, then they do this. They would spend the time to really investigate how quickly a machine can be inspected to the high standard. They'd even look at how load and offload a machine so that you can reduce what they call the changeover, because the truck's running at 100 quid an hour. If you could save 1% of that across in a day, 200 trucks.
That's a lot of money.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I really started to understand lean and understand efficiencies. And it was just such an eye opener. And that job in itself, I got to travel the world, got to meet other like-minded people and really, really start to understand how important these products are. And that, to this day, has become part of our DNA.
Why do you think that, because I've worked from Dutch companies and German, why do you think that part of the world, that really matters to them? We've never really adapted that level of commitment, have we?
In detail
in the UK market, really, have we?
I think in terms of how they operate their businesses, there's a few things. I've spoken to a lot of people about this who have a lot of sort of European colleagues, and first and foremost, somebody like a Rewall or a Coley or a Matiko, all these sort of big European businesses, they do operate very differently to a UK business, and I think unfortunately a lot of that is, I don't even know whether arrogance is the right word, but I think because we're an island and we're so insular in how we work, it's very rare that we actually get exposure to these rental companies out in Europe and actually see on the ground how they do it. And when I went to Rewall thinking I knew a lot about rental and I could run a really efficient fleet and this, that and the other. And I walked through the door on day one and there's big screens on the wall and you can literally click into it. That machine's been in red tag now for 17 days, 2 hours, 14 minutes. Yeah. And somebody would be like, why is that? And they'd go to the nth degree. How long did it take to ascertain what part was needed? Yeah. Where did we buy the part from? What was the lead time on the part? What was the decision to go to them for the part? Was it price or was it speed of getting the part in? And we've bought the part, but have we got an engineer allocated on the day for when that part arrives? Yeah. And it was just, there's so many different metrics.
People don't look at it, do they? That machine, for every day it's not on hire, is costing you X amount. And what is that costing you? I think that should be up on the screen.
We do, yeah.
Bang.
Yeah, so we're
losing £500 just on that kit in their yard today.
Yeah, we use a metric at Reactive now, and we look at what we call fleet efficiency. We're keen on utilisation, return on investment, rental margins, but we actually look at each product by what we call fleet efficiency. And that efficiency is how many days out of a month is it stood available for rent? How many days of a month is it stood awaiting inspection? How many days of a month is it stood awaiting pickup? And all of that, you squeeze that, and all of a sudden you can really transform what you're doing. A lot of people are stunned that we ring our customers up and we ask them if they've finished with the machine.
Wow, yeah, that's
people are like, you're off your head, aren't you? I was like, how many people do you think have a machine stood on site and leave it there and don't care about it? Especially ours, because most of them are above 80 foot. So it's not like you forget about a 19-foot scissor.
But that mentality came into the Highways England, didn't it? Where utilisation of machinery, are we giving the data to the hiring team to be able to say, we're not using that machine as efficiently. We probably, that 14 tonner, can we change it down to an 8 tonner? That became a partnership, and I think that's where some of the bigger boys have entrenched themselves within those businesses, because they get the hire, but by working with your customer like that and becoming a bit more, vocal, that might have been sat there doing nothing, it's costing you money, is not really shooting yourself in the foot. I don't think. I think that's
all we're doing.
That's a future-proofing your business, isn't it?
All we're doing is forecasting what fleet availability we've got. Yeah. We've only got a couple hundred machines at the moment in fleet. So for us, I need to know when those 1850s are coming off rent. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? 185-foot boom, £2,000 a week. If I know, well, do you know what? I'm not finished with it yet, but give me a call in 2 weeks because I think it will be. Yeah. I'm onto the commercial team going, right, 2 weeks' time, I need to see an order for an 1850.
Rather than it turn back in the office.
Rather than someone ring up, I'm finished. You what? You finished with it? And it's like...
It's a nasty surprise, isn't it?
And then you take, right, lads, I need everybody on this now. Has anyone got a project starting? You've got to be...
ahead of the game.
So if you think about it, we always say, like, we are a victim of, like, our own successes in that we operate much higher. Our utilisation is higher than the UK average. I think last week UK average was 61%. We're at like 74%. So 74% utilisation says, well, do you know what? We can squeeze our rates because certain products are 100%. Well, that's all good and well if they're at 100% in the market, and they're not.
No.
That product group in the market might still be down at 60. So although we want to push our rates higher to meet our activity levels, we've still got to be mindful that we're still competing. So if I know that product's coming off in a week, first and foremost, my guys are working on it now. So it might only then be stood for 1 week. Whereas if in a week's time I find out, it could be 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
And it's compressing that asset to be less and less lazy and less standing time. Same as if I know it's coming off next week, I can be more efficient with the guys to route the trucks. Don't forget that one in so-and-so. We've only got 2 locations, so we've got to be quite mindful in terms of trucks. And if I know I've got a machine coming off around next Wednesday, I can plan my routes around it, and then instead of recovering 60% on the truck, get 80, 90. So
how are you going to keep that instilled in the business as it grows? Because that's being led from you, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is led from me, but, we came out of the ashes of Rewool. Rewool decided to exit the UK. Number of reasons. One, Brexit meant that they couldn't be as fluid in terms of moving the fleet around. Again, we were project-based in the UK, but ultimately Rewool was project-based across Europe and the world. Mm-hmm. So if you had a big project landed in the UK, you could absorb fleet from France, Germany, Holland, wherever to service that job. Brexit happened, trade borders. All of a sudden, we were getting stung with what they'd call a deferred tax bill. Mm. So if you bring a product into the UK from say Holland, worth 300 grand, you will pay a deferred tax bill up front of the value of that machine, the tax of it, and they'd hold on to that tax until the machine leaves the UK.
Gosh.
Wow.
Now that's all right if it's a 19-foot scissor, but if it's a couple of 32-metre diesel scissors worth 300 and some £1,000 each, all of a sudden your cash flow is being absolutely rinsed. Mm-hmm. So they realised they couldn't do that. So then the UK became even more isolated. Market was volatile. We'd had COVID, Brexit. They were like, the biggest factor as well.
So what else did you bring from the operational excellence or apprenticeship you had there?
Yeah.
What else do you feel you gained from that experience?
International rental.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a gold mine. So one thing I think people don't realise is how many UK contractors work in Europe.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. It is absolutely phenomenal.
Or the Middle East or all over the world.
And the reality is they're a foreigner abroad. And they have limited access to information, suppliers, products, whatever. Also, there's a massive language barrier. Mm. And, again, I saw it firsthand. The market rates in Europe compared to the UK are phenomenal.
They're higher, aren't they? A lot higher.
I mean, a 19-foot scissor in the UK, if we're lucky, is probably 80, 85 quid a week. But the reality is, big player, it's 65, 67 quid a week. The minimum you'll pay in the majority of Europe is probably £200 a week.
Mm. I was talking to a guy, he works for a Dutch rental company as well. Yeah. But he said there's a product, they run pumps in Europe, this company, right? And he said they've never entered the UK market because there's not enough money in it.
There's no point.
No, that's what he said. And he was saying that the higher rates for pumps in France, Holland, Germany, all the rest of it, the higher rates for the pumps are so good that they're just happy with that market.
Why would
it would actually be a detriment to enter the UK market.
If you've got £1 million to spend on fleet, and this was one of those things that I was explaining to with if you like, Rewool. If every year they were spending 40 million euros on assets, why on earth are they going to put 4 million of that into the UK when they know they can double their investment by putting that into France or Spain or wherever else? I mean, they were so clever in a number of things. UK was a mature market. Everybody, every national or international, they wanted to be in the UK market. So the clever thing they could do there was, UK market needs to be new machines, the best out there, this, that, and the other. So, and the same as the Dutch market to a degree as well. So the product would come into the UK 4 or 5 years later, probably go to Spain. Because they didn't need to have new machines. Do
you think that we expect too much then in the UK?
Oh, massively, massively.
Because we want new machine, cheap
We want
price.
new machines. It's got to have the latest safety feature, which we all know half these safety features aren't necessarily safe. It's just a main contractor wanting to do it, and a big boy will go, well, we can call them out, we'll do this, and then no one else can touch it. And I think our expectations are just far too high in terms of what people are, what market rate you're getting for a product. for the expectation of the service level, the safety standard,
Yeah.
and everything else that comes with it. It's,
We spoke about it the other can't remember what week it was. There's a company out there took a major utilities contract, hire company, 1.8 ton Sani or excavator, trailer and breaker, £100 a week. And you're like, I just don't know why you'd want to do that.
I
and all
can't.
you're doing
What's
is
the business
destroying.
sense?
And that's why they don't realise that 60% of the UK hire market is and growing, by the way, is still by independents.
Yes.
So small companies like you say yourself, or smallish companies like yourself, 200 machines is a decent size. You know, are getting stronger and stronger because all the big companies have done is they seem to have starved themselves of real margin.
Oh, massively.
And then they can't afford to invest now in the people and the equipment.
They're scared to walk away from the cash. They're scared to walk away from that top line.
Yeah.
And it's, I think people think if there's enough volume, there's going to be a bit of margin in it. I talk to some people nowadays and it's like...
It's called busy fools, isn't it?
It's chasing turnover. Even in my day, as growing up from my late teens, early 20s, I won't mention the company, but it was all about turnover. It was never about profit. It was turnover. And you'd question some of the rates that were going out the door, but because there was 10 of them, in my mind, I was thinking that's 10 times the problem, though. But because there was 10,
Because they're highly geared, aren't they? You know, and they need their cash.
you know what it's like. Like certainly, like in plant, I think plant is a real challenge. Like you say, a 1.5 ton digger with a trailer, with a breaker. I mean, I don't know the rates, but that's got to be worth 24 grand worth of kit.
An independent, small hire company, you know, Joe Blogg's Hire, who's probably got 2 or 3 1.5 ton excavators, he'll get 150 for the weekend.
Easy.
You know, for the digger.
Yeah.
And if you want the breaker, that's another £100.
You want it on a...
And the trailer is another 30, 40, you know. So you can get that work. You just got to work a little bit harder, but they chase volume. Probably for shareholders and, you know, these are PLCs, most of these businesses, you know.
Yeah, but the big corporates, they're stuck now, aren't they? They've set these standards to a degree. You know, we're really fortunate. We don't carry enough accreditation to attack a tier 1. So it don't bother me. They can all do it all day long. Go and get your pop up for 25 quid a week or whatever. I'm just, for us to even contemplate being anywhere near that market, there's probably 20 grand into the business just to get those accreditations to even sit around a table and then to actually look at the number and go, do you know what, that's all right, you can keep that. Because even if there was £1 million in it, well, what do we actually get at the end of it? You know, and you know as well as I do, it can't just be about a residual after 5 years when that contract finishes. Because you know as well as I do, like ground workers, I mean, what's a 1.5 tonner that's been sat on a trailer after 5 years?
Everyone
is it worth
talks
anything?
about you get the return back on.
You don't get it.
You know, you don't. You if you're big enough and you can move your machinery through quickly and sell it and regurgitate it like some of the big hire companies, big operated plant hire companies out there, very successful at doing that model. But you're not telling me, and everyone's, I was speaking to someone the other day, still people think out there that you get 1%, you know. They still think that, you know, if it's 100 grand, you're getting £1,000 a week for it. And so how many 20-ton excavators are going out self-drive £1,000? They're not, are they?
No chance.
And they still think they're getting 30 to 50% depending on when they sell it. After 3 years, they still think they're getting 50%. Now, it depends on what with, how, where the wind's blowing and everything else. It's really difficult to predict the second-hand market, which is probably on its arse at the moment.
Well, and I think it will be for a lot longer now, because you think how many other manufacturers have entered the market. I mean, I don't even profess to say I'm an expert at the powered access market, because there's a new supplier every day of the week, it feels like. But if you think where we're at today, there's levels of saturation. There's only so much end user market, and obviously a lot of that second-hand market is overseas. And depending on how the UK is, and depending on trade, transport, you know, export, things like that, plus where the currency sits.
This came the other week. You know, some manufacturers or some people buying compliant UK engines now can't push those machines back into Africa, which was a big market for us and other parts of the world, because there's so much work to do to get it downgraded, if you like.
Yes.
Because they don't want that product, or they haven't got the expertise to repair that if it did go wrong.
So it's worthless.
I think we always want to wave the flag in this country of being top at health and safety, top at this, top of that legal, Sometimes we just should play the game a little bit more like the Europeans, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. And I think the difference is, people I spoke to over the years, there is a massive difference culturally.
Yeah.
And the main difference from talking to Europeans in different parts of the world is that there is a land border, is that they've experienced, their families talk about what they experienced during various world wars and things like that. Talking to guys that live in Belgium, they sort of joke amongst themselves and actually take the mick out of themselves that, they're scared to have an argument with people because there's too many people to argue with all the borders they've got.
Yeah.
And I think we've grown up now, and it's sort of, this message has been reinforced that the UK is such a strong economy. We're ahead of this. We did the Industrial Revolution. We don't border anybody. We're our own island. And basically it's made us a bit obtuse in terms of what we are and single-minded.
Over 10,000 millionaires left the country in the last since late part of last year. There was another stat the other day that shocked me a little bit. That the baby boomer we're 78% of housing in the country is owned by baby boomers. Is that what they're saying? Is there's 65-year-olds, 70-year-olds living in 3 and 4 bedroom houses.
Yep.
On their own, free empty,
Yeah, and then they've gone and put stamp duty up, which has decentivized anyone to move back and downsize into a smaller house.
Yeah.
When actually there's so many people that want that 4-bed house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
And I think we're not what we were, are we?
No, definitely not.
All admit that. But look, let's get back to.
I know, I got quite deep, didn't it? We started to,
What I want to hear about is, so you decided, great, the Dutch are pulled out of the UK.
Yes, yeah.
I'm going to do I'm just going to do it on my own. So what made you think do that, and how did that come about?
For about 12 months before Rewall left the UK, the market was still relatively strong. You could still see there was opportunities. Rates were still pretty good. And we had, I was really fortunate to have some good relationships within different manufacturers to think, if we did want to do this, the fact we was going to start something fresh without a credit line, without, we didn't have any books or anything no private investor. It was like, how'd you do it? So they pulled the pin, I think it was September 22 from memory. And that's when we first got notified. And I was really fortunate I got some time to basically go away and sort myself out, because they didn't really need an MD sat there meddling in them shutting the UK down, which was I'm grateful for. Had a new baby coming in that November. Already had a 2-year-old at the time, so I was like, going to need to do something. Had a few conversations about essentially going back into the corporate world and taking on a role in a business, and decided that I had enough money and an opportunity to actually have a go at something and actually, first and foremost, create a business whereby I still had the ability to be flexible with the family, because I had a young family and I could do a lot of it from home. I didn't have to, all the opportunities I was being offered was either London or the Midlands, or, and you know what it's like. You end up living in a hotel 3 nights a week and whacking a couple of thousand miles on the car. Yeah. So I didn't really want to do that if I could get away with it. So spoke to a couple of people and worked out that, we spoke to a lot of customers, spoke to suppliers. First and foremost, the customers were interested. So we had the Rewall customer base that would have nowhere to go. So we could tap into those quite quickly. And then it was about begging suppliers to give us a credit line, because we couldn't, there was nothing. So it was all about relationship and trust. And 2nd of January 2023, we essentially started trading. And I still remember the day now, and we're like, right, I wonder if this phone's going to ring. Right, best get on the damn thing. And we literally did it from, 2 kitchen tables. Mine and one of the other guys was literally both in our kitchens, ringing people, chasing up old customers. And still remember it now. End of the first month, we generated £32,000 in revenue in the first month.
Did you?
Wow. Yeah. Didn't make a penny out the first month. Couldn't take a wage for 6 months. But we knew we had something.
So what makes you different then? Why Reactive? Why are you different than others?
And this is,
apart from your operation excellency, obviously that you've got that.
Do you know what it is? Do you know what it honestly is, right? So I try and say to people, like, although we're a business that is based around assets, that's what we are ultimately. It's just assets that get shifted around and try and get revenue out of it. When we sit down on a monthly basis with the leadership team, 95% of what we talk about is people. We don't talk about the assets because they work for themselves. The data does all of that. Yes, there's little decisions about, do we need more of that? Can we get a better rate there? But 95% of what we talk about is people, and whether that's people in our business, whether that's our suppliers or our customers. And there's that triangle that is constantly just feeding each other. And I think the difference is with what we've got is that if you get the right people on the end of a phone and you're actually willing to listen to them and understand what they do in a job and why they want that scissor lift and why they're doing this. And as we spoke about, you finished with that bit of kit yet? Or going out and doing the 7, well, do you know what? You got 8 weeks on it, but you don't need that 20 metre for all 8 weeks. You actually only need the 20 metre for 2 weeks. So take the 15 metre for those 6 and I'll bring you the 20 metre down and you'll save $2,000 on your job.
Wow.
Oh, freaking hell. Someone's quoted me this for the whole, well, we're not here we don't need to take a bigger slice than we need. So we know who we are. We're absolutely under no illusions that our market share is 0. whatever percent. But
do you want to change that, sorry? Or are you happy with being that kind of, because there's nothing wrong with being that kind of size
you
business,
see, we all got aspirations. I've got a 10-year plan, really.
Right.
I'm 47, 40, I don't even know. I could be 48 for all I know. I forgot. It's all a number
Mark,
nowadays,
what age he is.
I want to have a clue, genuinely. So I want to be in a position that by the time I'm sort of mid to late 50s, I want to be able to make decisions.
Yeah.
And whether that decision is we've progressed somebody from in the business that's grown up with us, that understands it, that we can trust to run the day to day, or whether that is we look to sell up. Yeah. So within those 10 years, I've got to be realistic about what that business can achieve and how much debt do I really want to put into it to grow it. Because ultimately you still want to take something out of it at the end of it. So I want us to be in a position that we've got national coverage. And at the moment we've got national coverage with our big kit, but I want us to be in a position to, be able to service sort of 80, 90% with the core kit. So we know we've got to expand our network. But that's that if we're lucky.
Big investment there. Though.
It's huge, but we're really lucky. If you think about the big difference we have probably to a lot of businesses that we really, really encourage cross-hire. Yeah. A lot of companies, it's a swear word because there's not enough margin. Whereas for us, that's our safety net. We basically, if we maximise our own fleet, it'll generate about 60% of our total turnover. 40% is cross-hire. So even in our darkest day, in our lowest month, all of our kit's generally working. So anything that ever happens is our cross-hire bill reduces. Yeah. Where a lot of companies that don't embrace the cross-hire means that there's nothing on that rainy day. They're already working. Do you know what I mean?
That's a really interesting way of looking at it. And for years I've been involved in hiring and cross-hiring, and I've never. That's a great way of looking at it. So really, the cross-hire becomes a safety
expansion. Yeah, it's your expansion.
But that's how we used to do the 80-20 rule, wasn't it? So we would always look to try and have 20% of our product on rehire.
Yeah.
So therefore, as soon as yours come back, you've got that. So at 20%, I'm coming to you saying, look, I've got 20% rehire. Can I have 10% investment? Kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you'd say, yeah, okay. And then you'd build it back up to 20%, and then that would take the buffer for off hires. And
if you think the beauty of it, one, it obviously gives you security, right? So, like I say, I think in 2024, our busiest month was, I think top line was sort of 560,000. Our worst month, say December, was probably 390. So there's got a big swing in there. And the business has to be able to retract its cost base to be able to cope with those moments. Yeah. So you do that, but then the other side is that we use, and again, learning this from other businesses, what a lot of people I think forget is that when you do this, when you have a strong rehire model and you use the data the right way, it tells you what your fleet plan is for the next 2 years. It tells you where is the best location to open your next depot, because you're literally looking at your rehire product and going, I need 20 more 19s. Why aren't we opening in Birmingham when 14% of our business is sat in Birmingham? Yeah. Rather than someone going, I reckon Nottingham's a good idea.
Yeah.
Which is all.
Balfour Bees in Derby. Why don't we open there?
You know what I mean?
That guy had a couple of platforms of us over the years.
I've got a good rep there, but that good rep doesn't necessarily mean he's putting the right product in. He could, so I think we use that as a massive scale. Our business intelligence is all around in terms of what we're doing in the future. It all comes from what we're doing in rehire.
I think data's a big thing, and a lot of people don't. It's really interesting because I wanted to go back to what you spoke about earlier as well, and just tying it in with the fact that you obviously analyse your data and do a great job of it. Do you feel that because we're an island and we're isolated, do you feel that we the English economy in our industry, do we not take the time to learn the lessons from companies abroad?
Definitely not.
No.
I don't even know what the word is. I don't think it is arrogance. I think it's
Ignorance.
It could, yeah. It's a strong word. It is a strong word, but I do think there is something that stops us from thinking it's better elsewhere.
I've said it loads of times. We've always done it this way. Yeah. That's why we do it. You know, they didn't invade us, mate. That's where the attitude came back. We fought them off, you know. And you know what? There's loads of countries out there that do things much better than us.
Oh.
You know, and we should learn from all sorts. But how do you feel the current state of the market is? Do you think that? Because do you know what? For the last 2-3 years, I think we're fed up all talking about how bad it is. Is it bad or is it just saturated?
Saturation is a big problem, definitely. I think that the big challenge is that right now there's too many issues that are causing doubt, so it's slowing things down. What it's going to create is a bottleneck. There's going to be an explosion of work probably over the next 6 months with projects that have either been delayed or, you know, we've found an issue now where like the private sector is losing confidence in the UK, so they don't necessarily want to build that next distribution centre. Or, you know, Ireland saw a big boom with, you know, pharmaceutical data centres. You know, they did the tax relief to get these, you know, the big Americans to come over and do it, and then all of a sudden they're all now shaking because all of a sudden Trump starts saying, "Oh well, we're going to take it elsewhere now."
But today, this week in the press, they're saying that we haven't got the capacity, or we can't cope with the influx of data centres. We can't keep up with them. We can't keep up with this. We haven't got the skill set to build them. It's ridiculous. I don't get it. I mean,
the problem we've got with the data centre, believe it or not, it goes back to the EV cars. So people want data centres. You know, you literally, it's the most prime investment opportunity for anybody because the land's pretty cheap at the moment in some areas because the data centre doesn't need to be in a catchment where there's skilled people. No. The reality is you want it in the extremities, especially where it's cold, you know. So whereas say Scotland was really into the wind and, you know, energy and things like that, the reality is you'll probably see now all the data centres going up there because obviously their core temperature is probably 4 degrees lower than the Midlands and probably 8 degrees lower than the South Coast. Yeah.
Because
the biggest cost to a data centre is cooling it.
It's cooling it, the aircon. And someone was telling me, I was talking to a guy in IT, and he said that the really crazy thing is when you type in a question into, say, ChatGPT, he said what you don't know is that's in order to answer your answer, it's consumed about 12 litres of water. In cooling. You think everything you put onto the internet. So the biggest issue today is the acceleration of data center capacity or is AI. So many people are using AI now that the storage required for that is just phenomenal. So again, the old company Rewall I was at, they literally had their own experts that were employed by Rewall, and all they did was data centers. And if you spoke to them, you would think that they were a tech guru at a data center. They knew the ins and outs of it. They knew how it worked. They knew the size of this. They knew that. They knew what power the cooling systems needed to be. They knew how it was built. Wow. So that when they knocked on that door and went, you need 200 scissor lifts on there, don't you? Yeah. Well, you're going to need 40 for that. You're going to need 60 for this. It's going to be 8 months on that. No one else could compete with them. Right.
So the Europeans, certainly in the Nordics, like the Swedens and the Denmarks of the world, where their, again, core temperature was a lot lower, they were just getting inundated with data centers, because they could basically carve out a huge hole in the side of a mountain, and it didn't even need to be cooled. So it was more cost effective for them to do that than build a big frame in the UK on expensive soil and then put massive cooling systems in place. Oh, right, yeah. So data centers is huge. I think I don't really take much interest in what the government say about government funded projects. I just don't, for somebody like me in our business, means nothing.
It's always a pledge. Yeah.
It does nothing for us. We can't even compete for the subcontractor. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because if you want to get your machine on there, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, it's got to be this colour and blah, blah, blah. And can it charge on solar panels and everything? It just ain't worth us even attempting it. Yeah. But what that does do then is mean that a lot of product goes to those government funded projects, which then gives us the opportunity in the private sector with the smaller shells of, frames and stuff that go up. So you think when we came out of COVID, or even towards the end of COVID, it was just, the world was inundated with steel frame sheds. Because all the distribution, the Amazons and everybody else, and the Gustos and all these online shoppers, they just didn't have the infrastructure in the UK. And I don't know the stats, but I imagine today there's probably 2,000-3,000 times the amount of delivery drivers on the road today than there was 3 years ago.
Last week we showed the increase in tech companies, which one of them's Amazon and Google. They're all shopping. They've all got a product to sell now. Facebook, Shopify, everything else like that. And we showed that pre-COVID, the Magnificent Seven, we call it. They had an equivalent revenue of $5 trillion, which is now $17 trillion. So you can see the shift in the way their lives have changed, really, in not just how we communicate with each other, but how we shop and how we...
Well, the problem is we all moan about the death of the high street, but how many of us can actually be asked to go and park up in a car park, pay £8 and actually walk down a high street to go to, it's not even a Wilco's anymore, is it?
Well, it takes you 2 hours to do 2 miles.
I wonder what we are going to do to go out. So I was, you said driving around for 3 days a week. I've had one of them weeks this week. Yeah. And one of the weeks I was stuck so I've been in Portishead, and I thought, it was about 5 o'clock. I'd had a real hard day. It was Monday. My head was banging. I thought, what am I going to do? Let me go home. So I went to found a cinema.
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm going off piece a little bit here, but found a cinema. And I worked out I'm going to book two films, because I'm on my own here.
Yeah.
5:30 or 5:45. So I watched Marching Powder.
Yeah.
Which, if you like Danny Dyer, it's good.
Yeah.
If you don't like the C word, then don't go.
Don't watch it. Okay.
And that's including the women in it. But it was an all right film. And then I watched a thing called Alto Nights, which is a gangster film where Robert De Niro plays the same part.
Okay.
Like the opposite part.
Yeah.
So he plays two parts in it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
You watched two films?
when I watched 2 films, I'm on my own,
mad.
Charlie.
I've never watched a film on my own,
Yeah.
Never.
I think that's brave.
I want to know what he rates Marching Powder out of 10.
Out of 10, I'd give it look, it ain't the business. Yeah, Danny Dyer, the business, ain't Football Factory. It's the second one to Football Factory. So I'd give it probably a 7.5. To be fair.
That's strong. That's strong, because she was on about watching it, and then she said to me, we were supposed to go last week, and then we ended up, I bought it because she said, I've been having a look at the reviews, and it says, you always make me laugh. It said, it's about a bloke in a 4-bed detached somewhere, and that's it. Right, and that's what someone wrote, right?
It's about a guy with addiction. He's mid-40s. He understands he's got addiction. He's got to sort his life out. And he's still fighting.
Yeah.
But you've got to look at it as a comedy. There's a little bit serious, but my point being was, you're right. Yeah, going to the cinema. I've never had a problem with that. It used to be a £5
Fair play.
on a Monday. It was £8. Right, £8 to see a film, which is normally about £15. Yeah,
It's reasonable.
And look, the View cinemas now, I've got like...
Did you have a nice comfy chair?
Chairs,
Yeah.
and with the table and all that, yeah.
I'll never go cinema.
But it was only... It's not as if anyone was going to go look at that guy on his own there. There was
Look at that guy
5
on his
people
own.
in the whole cinema.
You're joking.
Right? I don't understand, because of the way technology's changing and everyone's watching a film now, and you can probably buy that Marching Powder probably on Prime. I don't...
Where's the money in it?
Yeah, where's the money?
They say
That's
about
not
like
one-
the shop.
One closed down, sorry, didn't they? Who was it who closed down? Cineworld, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Odeon and
Yeah.
Kent closed.
That's when we was in the
as well.
shares market.
It was, we lost
After
our shares,
COVID,
Charlie.
we dumped all our money into Cineworld,
Yeah.
and it went flying like that because it had been dead. But what we did get rid of, and it's risen by nearly 600%, Rolls Royce.
Yeah. Since they've done the mini turbines.
Yeah. So we had it all loaded in Rolls Royce, because we were actually, Mark, when we was in that group, we were actually 3 years ahead of our time.
We was, yeah.
We were one of those, that have set up a social media platform like MySpace well before the real ones turned up, But anyway.
We were buying. We done. What's the one? We done what's the car that's now in the Formula One? We done that. It was Aston Martin, didn't we?
Aston Martin,
We got Aston Martin, And then nothing was really happening. We dumped them off and it goes, Aston Martin's going to be in the F1. And it was like, are you joking?
Holding your nerve, innit?
Yeah. But that's a different thing.
Sorry,
So-
Charlie.
No,
I was just saying, what's next for you, Steve? What do you see happening?
I think
Is it just more of the same, or?
Yeah, I think this year we've done 2 really strong years of growth, which ultimately you just physically don't have the capacity or the energy to just say constantly every day it's more. As the business gets bigger, there comes bigger risk. So we got our fingers burnt year 1 and 2 because we were like, yeah, take the order. Don't worry about the credit control. Don't worry about the credit check. Just get, and then 3 months later, you're like, you're able to pay us at all. Yeah, I'll pay you next week. So we got stung. A couple of biggies. Well, in our world, big. I think one did us for about 60 grand in the first year, which literally was just
Credit insurance, mate. That's what you need.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, literally ended the first. That happened, and we were like, right, credit insurance. Everyone's on a credit limit. Everyone's this, none of that. And that was like a big reality check. That was like the first time we were like, we're not playing now, guys. I always said to people, like, it's one thing running somebody's company. It's another thing running your own business.
Yeah.
And, 60 grand, when I was at various companies, we've been hit for this, or like when there's been big Carillion things, so-and-so's got banged for 120 grand and this, that, and the other. And then like,
that's 12 people's wages a month or 15 people's
so like
wages a month.
60 grand. And it didn't really dawn on me for a couple of weeks. Then I was just literally sat down one night, like having a glass of wine, I think, probably crying into it. And I just suddenly thought, I wonder what 60 grand looks like on this kitchen table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like, I can never, ever let that happen again, because no one's ever gone, here you go, Skeates, here's 60 grand. But someone's literally gone, thanks very much for that 60 grand, Skeates.
It's hard to, because I remember you said to me a year ago, I'm going to have a consolidation year this year, Mark.
Yeah,
this year,
I felt
so, and then you had another jump at it. It's hard to have that range,
It's
isn't
so
it? Because
difficult because there's
wanna,
opportunities you've got to take. And ultimately right now, the reward is far greater than the risk. But 2025, obviously, we've had some challenges. We started our business with 3 directors. We're down to 2 now. That in itself is a challenge. You know what I mean? When you're so close to sort of 2 or 3 people, when you're all geared up doing something, and then we all do it. All happens, doesn't it? One party don't want to follow the same direction as the other 2. So you got to, break those ties, and you don't realise how powerful that is and how difficult that is, and the energy that takes out of you. While you're still getting up the next day to do the same thing. So me and Gary, who own it now, we're like, we do need a couple of months now just to have a little bit of a breather. And also the business is getting bigger, so we've got to make sure we're more secure. If we're going to make bigger decisions, you've got to make sure you can.
But you've got to have time to work on the business, haven't you, rather than in the business?
A lot of decisions have not. We've never done a decision based on instinct, but there's always been decisions which are influenced by our gut. Every decision's influenced. I don't care what anyone says. It don't matter how good that number looks, but if your gut says there's something not right there, you got to sort of park it for a while. So I think this year for us, I think a lot of people are talking I know people talk about recession, but I always say to people, you become in charge of your own destiny. The more people that are down talking it are basically saying there's going to be a recession, there's going to be this, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And
the press as well, they don't help.
The problem you probably got to think about is that we're such a small part of that market that ultimately we don't really influence it. Whereas the bigger players that have got 10, 15,000 machines that have to hit a minimum rental revenue every month, they're going to dictate that rates will get slashed. They're going to dictate that they have to maintain this number of machines on rent. And ultimately, we just got to toe the line with that.
Yes, because people drive their business, don't they? January sales, utilisation, get it up.
Yeah.
Everyone's getting what they can for their kit. And I think what you said there is all these majors that are trying to work for big companies, and all they care about is really just that ego of winning that work with them companies more than the actual what they're actually earning out of them. How many companies actually take their customer base and work out the profitability of each customer and go, God, we want to keep them happy. We spend so much more time with that company and we earn nothing with them. They don't pay us on time. They have crap rates, and the amount of good businesses I've known that have sometimes gone, do you know what? We're not working with that company anymore, or we're not going to be in that sector anymore. And it's been the best thing, because ultimately you can live off the back of ego, which don't pay off the bills.
Pays nothing. You got a guy I respect highly always said to me, get your utilisation up at whatever cost. Get your utilisation up, and then you can work on your rate. Don't start with the rate, because the rate means nothing when you've got a yard full. So if you've got to go to market and you're dictated to, but that's fine. Get yourself in the 80% utilisations. Get that baseline of revenue there where you need it, and then you can tweak. Then you can demand more in terms of what you're looking for.
If you can get that rate back up.
Yeah, and that's I mean, again, a little bit before your time. If you think pre-recession, back in the day, certainly in powered access, it was a really straightforward rule of thumb. It was £10 a foot. So a 19-foot scissor in the UK was 190 quid. A 45-foot boom was 450 quid. It was standard. That was standard. Everybody was there or thereabouts, right? Recession comes, everyone's this, like you say, if you can get it back. That was what, 2007, 2008? We're nearly 20 years on from that, and we're nowhere near that. We're still at, if we're lucky, we're at 50%. And in reality, over the last 10 years, with manufacturing and pricing going up, transport going up, land going up, rates going up, everything going up, the rates haven't followed. So then it becomes that you've got to work 5 times as hard to generate that margin. I mean,
so are we all mad then, being in the hire industry?
well, that's what I spoke to somebody 2 weeks ago over at the IAPAs that I used to work with. And he was a Dutch guy. And the one thing with Dutch people is they're really, really straight talking.
Yeah.
And he literally said to me, "Are you mad?"
Yeah.
And I went, "What do you mean?" He went, "Are you absolutely effing mad doing this?" I went, "I must be, yeah." He went, "You know how hard this is?" "Yep." "You know how little you get back for it?" "Yep." He went, "It's because it's all you know, innit?" I went, "Yep."
Yeah.
And that's not me being stupid or naive, but it is the world I know. And I would love to talk to somebody who was running a business back in like 2006 where they were getting 450 quid for an asset costing them, probably at the time, 45 probably cost about 35
but that's
grand.
because people were scared. Like when I remember powered access coming through, you remember SGB were one of the ones, scaffolding company.
Yeah, they wanted
it. So that's when you was getting really good rates.
Yeah.
But everyone was scared of it. Because they didn't understand the machinery, and it was quite niche, and that's the word, isn't it? Niche. It's not niche now.
No.
What we've seen as well, especially in my industry, is dealers now are becoming very much having to, because they've got so much stock, they have to become semi-rental businesses. I listened to a guy who was one of the head boys in Terex, who's since moved on to another business, and I listened to he spotted the trends of European dealerships that have to have a rental arm. So this is mainly for bigger equipment.
Yeah.
So we're talking about big shredders at 600 grand. They'll also offer a rental opportunity for their customer base. And you're finding now that dealers in the UK are doing the same thing. That's only going to come down to the smaller end of the market. I see that forklifts, for example, has always been that way. If you sell a forklift, you're expected to hire it.
Yeah.
And companies that we've dealt with together, and as customer and supplier, we've done a little bit of that.
Yeah.
We would sell and hire, try and work that partnership. I think the rental companies, I think there's a good market for that, because I think the rental companies need that support, because you don't want to own everything. You can't afford to own everything with the rates where they are. So you need to be able to go and tap on the shoulder, hopefully, and I don't see there's any problem with going to a dealer and renting something off it. The rental companies won't agree with me, but they nick each other's work when you rent off them.
Yeah.
They haven't got together. I mean, let's talk access. I think there's a new group, the Axis Link and Alliance, isn't it?
Yes.
There's a new group that are doing plant, I think now. But the Axis Link and Alliance, I mean, I'm not saying it should be a cartel, but why aren't they driving the rate up?
I know.
But they're not.
It's a weird one. I think the principle of it works. They have an opportunity to essentially price fix and not compete with each other, offer national coverage, compete with the big players. But then the problem behind that is, if you're part of that link or alliance or whatever, if you can go, when do you stop going after the end user? Because it's your customer working in someone else's patch. Do you want to pass it on to them and make 5% margin? Or do you want to send your own machine an extra 10 miles up the road and make 40%?
Yeah, but all we're seeing is businesses start up. I'm not saying, we've seen probably, I think I've seen 5 or 6 in the last 7 or 8 months, access companies go.
Yeah.
So all we're seeing is an easy route to market because people can get good, cheap funding. I'm not saying it's cheap, but people seem to be throwing funding solutions. They're going out to market. All they're doing is got one thing, cut the rate, and all of a sudden they're no longer there anymore because they realise that cash flow is tight or someone goes bust on them or something. And you just think the industry needs to have a look at itself, really. The customer doesn't understand the transparency of the real return on investment on their machine.
No, definitely not.
And I've always said that should be transparent. That 19 foot's, 50, 60 pound a week or 65 pound a week, who in their right mind? But you have to have that product because the customer won't deal with you unless you've got a range. But the customer should say, should understand it. That's a 10 grand product. It's, this is how much it is to maintain it, whatever. And we maybe should be more transparent. I don't know your thoughts on that, but, and try and drive it up because the procurement people just out there are just killing it.
The problem you've got is that the demand doesn't meet the supply right now. And it's that it just people get nervous. If it's an 8 grand scissor lift, which is probably there, say 7 grand for a 19 foot scissor. And the reality is you will get, I think an average price is £72 a week in the UK right now. What senses are in that? It's like a £50,000.
But I understand why you've got to do it.
You've got to do it. You've got to be in that market. I mean, I'm not a believer in, there's like, certainly in powered access, there's certain products you just got to have, whether it's a Z45, whether it's a 18 metre diesel scissor lift. They're like the bread and butters of the world. But you don't make a bean out of them. You don't make a penny on them, but you've got to have them for everything else that the client wants. And it's like, when does that world change? And I remember a company I was at, and it was like, we're not buying any 18 metre diesel scissors. We refused to buy them. We would rather leave the market than buy them because they're 50 grand a unit and you're getting 180 quid a week. I would rather spend that 50 grand on 10 of them to make that. And it was right. Eventually they did go into and go, right, we've bought 10 of these, but that is the minimum rate.
And do you feel that's because there's too much oversupply and too much choice of manufacturers? They're giving massive terms now. Or do you feel that's benefits you as a business?
I think that's been there a long time. Long before sort of the Chinese brands came to market, long before all that, 18 metre scissor lifts, when these problems were there was probably 2 or 3 manufacturers. Probably Hula, Skyjack, Genie were probably the 3 really. So it wasn't that there was a choice and people were just buying them for the sake of it. It became part and parcel, and then that rate just became the rate. Yeah. And the bigger nationals that were hiring 20, 30 of these at a time, they'd get it, but then their contractor working for them, we might have been on plant and labour. Well, then the contractor's going, well, I only pay so-and-so for them, so I ain't getting an invoice off you for more than that. And then it starves that rate and it sits there. So I think there's challenges with it, but there's still opportunities. And like I say, we don't sit at that top end of the market. We sit with the guys that will spend, probably our biggest client will spend 600 grand a year with us, but they're not even an end user. Our biggest end user might spend 500 grand a year, which is still a tidy sum of money, but they're not that tier 1 blue chip construction company that can tie you in knots 100-day terms and will literally pay you peanuts. So we can't protect ourselves from downturns in markets. What we can do is give ourselves the best chance. And, whether that's construction, like I was saying, international rental for us is huge. We're probably one of the few that can go source a machine probably anywhere in the world. And people know that, so they'll pay us a premium to do that job for them. And that's an untapped market. The amount of people we on a daily basis, the inquiries we get from people going, right, I need 10 of these in Denmark. Can you do it? I need 20. We literally priced a job last week, £500,000. And it's a UK customer, and he's following the main contractor because they've picked up the job for another data centre.
So it's a service provision really, than just as you said, the assets, just a byproduct.
If you think you go to the buyer in the office, and this is the way we look, we always tell our guys this, you've got to remember that buyer has got 20 other jobs to do. And the smallest part is probably the plant. Because he's talking to the QS about this, the steel, the this, the that, the other. The plant is just a pain in the arse to source. And he's got to then go on the internet and find 3 prices for different powered access companies. And he's talking to somebody in German or Danish or whatever. So we have access to those markets already through our years in working at Rewall especially. So it's like, well, just park it. We'll take that away from you. First and foremost, we've got a great level of buying power because we're spending a lot of money in Europe already. So you'll probably end up paying the same price and have none of the drama. And your invoice comes to you in sterling. And if your machine breaks down, you talk to somebody in English and they'll deal with it. So that market's ever growing. And then we do a lot in like the media. You know, there's the sectors that have got huge tax reliefs, which are almost protecting themselves from those. You know, the media sector is just continuously growing, and it's got, you know, these tax havens. That means the Apples, the Marvel, you know, all of these are all working in the UK. They're not filming them in America. It's not, you know, it is nothing to do with other than tax relief.
And that's got back on board now, is it?
Massively. I mean, what has stunned me, certainly in film production and things like that, you know, they went through COVID, same as everybody else. They took all the suffering, you know, everything stopped. Every production was, you know, just shelved, wasn't it, overnight? They come out of COVID, the restrictions are lifted, and it's like, right, the writers are having a strike now. And the writers had a strike because of AI. Because basically what was happening was the writers would do the spine of the story, and then AI would produce the script.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but also there was the thing with what's his name, who played Hammond, wasn't it, who played Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And they had the Mandalorian series, and they done an AI avatar of him.
Oh,
at the end, a younger version of him, and he never got a penny for it.
Exactly. So
They were trying to protect their own rights, their own image rights. I mean, that is ridiculous.
How can they actually
But that's ridiculous, isn't it?
How can they stop?
No, but
you
should have the right over your own image, surely.
Oh yeah.
If you're
they could argue that that's not him because all they've done is take the key facial features, taken it. Used AI to take that down to a boy, but you could argue that's not you, is it?
Yeah, but no, you got to remember it. So we're the writers. So they did their strike, which I can't remember. That went on for months and months and months until they got an agreement. Right?
What agreement did they get? That
they got protected. So they got protected in terms of their work, that they couldn't use the AI so they could only use a proportion of it to essentially clean the data up and things like that. Right. So they got their level of protection. Fair. But as soon as that one was finished, pretty much straight afterwards, then the writers went on strike. The actors, which is exactly for the Mark Hammond thing, right? So they were literally employing actors for one day to be stood on a green screen, put all the dots on them, employ them for one day, and then
do a whole series.
Then the whole series is computer generated.
Yeah.
Wow. Because that's what they reckon. I was talking to someone. That's what they reckon the future's going to be. They're saying that actors won't act anymore. No. You're actually a model. You'll come in, put all the dots on your facial expressions. And that's the trouble, isn't it? Here's your day's wage for
that's it. So then they're staffed, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're done. And then the new series that's gone, and the legacy, and it repeats and repeats. So it stunned me that they went through this 3-year period of not being able to work. And then during that 3-year period, obviously the studios and all these big companies and that were basically in the background feverishly going, well, how do we stop this in the future? Well, AI does it for you. You don't need people then, so that we can do it ourselves. So they came up with this solution, and the writers went, nah, sod this. And then the actors, hang on a minute, we need to get on this. So it was probably another year before they actually really started working again. But now that backlog, I mean, I think I was talking to somebody the other day, currently in the UK, there is I think it's something like 1,200 major productions. So whether that's high-end TV, whether that's, blockbuster film, whatever it is, that's how many productions are currently either started or about to start in the UK. It's like phenomenal.
Is that why there's been, that might answer the question. I noticed the last couple of 3 years, there's been an influx of what I call animated films come out.
Potentially,
is that why?
I mean, I don't know.
Because they prioritise them because that's something they can do and get out into the public.
It makes sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
it would make sense.
I've noticed that only because I got a little girl, and she all the time I can't remember what she watches now, but all these films come out. Sing, that's one of them. Sing 2, and
but you think all those films there. If you're an animator, you can do that from home, can't you? So you think throughout the whole period of time while we was in lockdown, I don't know what it takes from first day of shoot or whatever to actually canning a film, probably a couple of years in it, and then another year to get it to screen or whatever. So you think there's that 3-year period where all these companies still need to make money.
Yeah. You can do podcasts on AI now. You can. We might not be sitting here, or we may be. You will never.
Who knows?
We'll never know.
Some
It's been great, Steve.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
very
for
much for
coming on,
coming
man.
away, all the way from Portsmouth.
It's an
to see us.
absolute pleasure.
Yeah, brilliant.
Genuinely is a pleasure.
So, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
very much,
Thank
mate.
you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate
Good luck.
it.
Good luck with everything.
Gents,
Lovely.
thanks.
The opinions expressed within this podcast are solely the individuals and do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of the sponsors or its affiliates.